Welcome to the Woman's Hustle, Thrills and Spills of Entrepreneurship, where we keep it real about what it takes to build, grow, and thrive. Here, you'll hear the unfiltered journeys of women entrepreneurs from everywhere. The wins, the setbacks, the lessons, and the behind the scene truths of aligning, starting, and scaling our businesses with purpose. Because let's be real, this road ain't always pretty. From battling self doubt to juggling responsibilities and facing the pressures to have it all figured out, this hustle can be pretty heavy. That's why this space exists to fuel you with the motivation, drop strategic gems on the topics that matter most, and remind you you are not in this alone. This is the Woman's Hustle. What up, guys? Welcome back to the Woman's Hustle, Thrills and Spills of Entrepreneurship, the podcast that you're going to hear about the ups, downs, and all arounds of this entrepreneurial journey. I'm your host, Coach Kay, and if you see, I am not here by myself. But before I get started, make sure you guys have subscribed to the channel, Upgraded Mindsets Media. If you're listening audio-wise, then make sure you are favoriting the Woman's Hustle on your favorite streaming platform. But I'm going to allow my guest the honor of introducing herself. Hello.
Hi, Keisha. Thank you so much for having me on. I am Melina Dio, and I am a podcast strategist and coach. So I help those podcasters that are stuck. They have a podcast, or maybe they haven't even launched yet and they're stuck before they even launch, or they have a podcast and it's just sitting there collecting dust in Apple or Spotify. They don't know what to do with it. They're told everything to do. YouTube, you got to have a podcast, you got to have a Substack, you got to have all these things, right? So
Yes,
they're just confused. So I help them get
absolutely.
unstuck. Yeah.
I love that. And I think that that's important to do because we know, as coaches that that's what we got into it for, to help individuals get unstuck for whatever journey it is. But the one thing that I know I learned along the way is everything does not have to be so complicated. So I'm glad that you touched on that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that too, guys, too. But I want Melina to share a little bit more of what got you started in this journey and industry.
Yeah. So I started in the podcast industry because of the pandemic. I was
Mm,
laid off. I had two small kids at home and I was unsure of what was next.
right.
Yeah. So actually, my husband had a work podcast. And so I started practicing and editing with his work podcast. And that quickly turned into me wanting to work with women podcasters to use their podcast as a visibility tool, as a connection tool, and as a growth tool for their business. And so that's what I do today. I support them in their building confidence and consistency and systems for their podcast so that they're not overwhelmed. And it's much easier for them.
I agree. And as someone who also started their podcast during the pandemic, I think that was a lot of us, but I love to see that you stuck it out, right? Because there are a lot of us who did not, and it could have just been a hobby for some, very well so, but I love that you stuck it out. But not only did you begin the journey, you also said, hey, I'm going to help some individuals. I'm going to help some women be able to do that too. I know for me personally, I started podcasting because of the power of storytelling. And I think that people don't use that enough. We want to tell our stories. We see the age of influencers and all that good stuff. But I started these podcasts in 2021, and I feel like that's probably the best place where I know that I can share a story, I can share insight, and I know that so many people relate to me when it comes to that, right? I want to touch on something that I feel like that needs to be discussed because we're living in an age right now where people are valuing the likes over anything else, right?
Mhm.
And me personally, I have never been the person to worry about a lot of likes. Now, I've had imposter syndrome, guys. Don't get it twisted. I look at it and it's like, oh, only got one like, it can be discouraging for someone that is trying to establish and still on that journey. But I really had to shift my mindset, which upgraded mindsets. I use my tools for me too, y'all. But I had to really shift my mindset because I can still be making an impact. They might not have liked it, they may not have shared it, they may not have commented. So I can't base the impact that I wanna make based off of that type of response. And I think I wanna touch on, like, the legacy that I'm really trying to build with The Woman's Hustle, but also my other podcast, Empowering Real Talk, because I'm trying to build that legacy so 5 years later, people can go back and hear that episode and be like, "Man, yes, that's still relevant to me right now." So I'd love for you to share a little bit on when you're talking to your clients, like, because I know they come to you and be like, "Oh my god, I only got 3 people said something," what's kind of your go-to to people who wanna validate the likes versus the legacy that they're trying to build?
Yeah, absolutely. In podcasting, people are so focused on metrics. I mean, I'm sure you've looked at your downloads and thought, my gosh, like
Facts,
one person listened to this podcast.
facts.
But like you said, it's that mindset. It's thinking that one person is that one person that needed to hear your message that day. And it's not just about downloads. It's about so much more. It's about connecting with your listeners. It's about providing value to them. And the right people will find you. And I really believe that if
For sure.
you keep at it and you keep trying, I know that the right people will find you. And I see it with myself. My podcast launched and it did great when it launched, but my downloads are not near where maybe someone would think would be a successful podcast, but I feel like I'm successful because
Absolutely,
I
and
have
that's what
people
matters.
coming back weekly and coming back to listen to me. And even if I am on a season podcast, I like the season method right now. And so they have come back for my mini series that I did. So just seeing that excites me. But
Yeah,
I mean, I look at it maybe in a totally different light, but it also having a podcast has helped me have so much more momentum in my visibility for my business and my personal brand. So for me, it's been empowering more than it's been something that makes me not be confident. So,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
and I can agree with that because, yeah, there were days where I'm like, "Oh my god, I only got 2 downloads on this podcast. I only got 3. I only got 1," and those things can be discouraging, but the one thing that I want us to realize, and this is on any level when it comes to the entrepreneurial journey, we're just talking about podcasting today, y'all. You still have to be your authentic self. You are not going to get far trying to replicate somebody else's like journey or replicating what they're doing in their podcast. What feels right to you? I like to talk. So guess what? I have 2 podcasts cuz I like to talk that much, y'all. So like being my authentic self with Empowering Real Talk is more of the general audience. And I'll share a quick backstory on that. I have had Empowering Real Talk since 2021. The Woman's Hustle was not launched until 2024, and I was actually in a mastermind group where I was deciding, did I want to just recreate Empowering Real Talk into The Woman's Hustle, or did I just wanna branch out and make a second podcast? And it was so blessed to be in that mastermind because they were like, "Why are you gonna abandon the audience that you already have?" Right? Because I'm like, I work with women business owners. That's my journey. I work with those who are on their professional journeys and trying to align and things like that. But I've had an audience for 3 years. So it was like, that was a reality check. And I stress the importance of being in those type of spaces, y'all. Having support around like-minded people. Because had I just decided to make that decision, I would have completely abandoned the audience that I had had for 3 years to attain a new audience. And I'm glad that I made that decision and kept them both. So that means I could talk times 2. So, but I stress that to you guys because whatever journey you're doing in the entrepreneur space, whether you're full-time or part-time, you still have to be authentic to yourself. Your authenticity is your currency, baby. And I that's a mindset shift that you got to understand. But I will say that I'm proud of you for wanting to step up in front of the scenes because I think that that's super dope. And that's just a part of your evolving. And I think that that's great, sis.
Yeah. I love how you said part of the evolving because it was.
Mhm.
It was big for me to eventually come to
Yeah.
this spot, right?
I love it. I wanna ask you, as we work with coaches and things like that, what do you see some of, like, the common mistakes may be when we are, working with women that wanna start the podcast, and how do you think that they maybe can avoid those things?
The common mistakes are there's a few and I mean, we kind of touched on the downloads. I think
Mhm,
it's also something they don't even want to start because they're just so fixated on the downloads equaling subscriber or sponsorships, I meant to say,
mhm.
equaling sponsorships. So if their podcast isn't going to make any money, what is the point of even starting? And that's where a lot of women get stuck because they see they think that they need to make money from it right away, or they only see one way to make money from it. And there's so many ways that you can monetize your podcast. And it's not just by sponsorships
Ooh, tell them
because
again.
yeah, there's so much. There's affiliates, there's selling your own services. You could collaborate with other podcasters and maybe gain some of their audience as well. So, sharing audiences and just being visible in
Yeah.
all is going to help you to spread your podcast around because the best way to do that is word of mouth.
Ooh.
Yeah, right?
Facts. It's
Right.
fact. I love that you said that because we've gotta get out of that mentality of feeling like that we have to do everything by ourselves, y'all.
Mhm.
You don't, like, you don't. There are spaces for us. If you're on social media, there's groups that have, find a guest or, you can post your things in there. You can go in there looking to see if there's guest opportunities. That's something that I am working on. I have been more intentional in getting onto other podcasts. Now, do I love my own? I absolutely do, but also being able to share my insight and things on other people's platforms, that's also a sense of fulfillment for me. That's an audience that I may not have reached, if I didn't do that. So just because you are starting your podcast, don't limit yourself to feeling like that you can't be on others' podcasts because
Mhm.
that's one of the
Right.
biggest things that I learned and I've been intentional with that, but I'm ramping it up for the upcoming year because I do wanna be on other platforms. I wanna be interviewed too, I love to
Right.
talk, y'all, as I said. The power of collaboration and support is just something that is super necessary. I wanna kinda touch with you for a second, Melina, get a little personal. I know that you are in the process of evolving, since we use that word, and I'll continue to use it. But what kinda got you to that point? What was there a light bulb that clicked in? What made you decide to say, "It's time for me to step on the other side of that camera?"
Well, I think it was 2 things. I think it was putting in the reps of just doing the little things day after day, week after week, doing LinkedIn Lives, doing any kind of collaboration, doing summits with other people. That was part of it, and also just seeing that I really needed to have a personal brand for people to connect with me. Also,
Yeah,
because when you're on socials, you're just a post, right? And it's hard to feel that connection with someone. And that's why I think video is such an important aspect of anything that we do, podcasting, even if people are doing Substacks or whatever they're doing, it's also great to have either that voice or that video to have that deeper connection.
I agree. Share with us a few platforms that your clients use, that they inquire, or some of the things, because like you've mentioned Substack, and although I'm not on Substack, I'm subscribed to a few Substacks. So I'm getting myself a little familiar. If you don't mind kind of just sharing a little bit more about some of the platforms that you see your clients wanting to use or are using.
Yeah, sure. So, first off, I would say LinkedIn is a big place that I see a lot of my clients on, and I have probably met them mostly there or some way.
Nice. Nice.
I'm a big LinkedIn person, but also Threads is big right now. If you
Mm,
are looking for podcast guesting, that's a great place to be right now for podcast guesting and to just connect with your
yeah.
people. A lot of people, they're just more friendly on Threads, I feel. Yeah, you can just celebrate one another there.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a place that's great for podcasters and people looking to podcast guesting. Substack is also up and coming. They're not just for newsletters and writers anymore. They are adding podcasting, they're adding a little bit of a social aspect. And a lot of people are moving over that way because a lot of the other social media is so saturated.
As entrepreneurs, we can sometimes feel that overwhelm,
Mhm.
that moment of why am I doing this? What's share it with us like a strategy or like a reset tip that you could just maybe recommend to us that you do and something that works for you.
Yeah, actually, just the other day, I had a couple meetings lined up and I was feeling a little stressed out. And I actually was singing the Lizzo song to myself, saying, you know,
Yeah.
baby, how you feeling? Feeling good
Come
as
on.
hell, right? And I said, I'm empowering myself. I can do this. I don't need to stress out. I have the knowledge. I can do this.
I love that. Self affirmations is so key, y'all. Yes, do we want validation from other people? We do, and
Mhm.
especially as women, we're vulnerable like that and we're emotional like that. But I'm gonna tell you, your number one cheerleader better be you.
Mhm.
Even on the moments that you're down and you're like, "Oh, I just don't know," I'm 5 years into this, and I'd be lying to y'all if I didn't tell y'all that I have had moments where it's like, "What am I doing?" I recently lost my best friend, and there were moments where she was, like, probably my top 2 motivators, so not having that daily encouragement from her anymore, not having being able to talk brainstorm with her and her kind of put me in my place like, "Friend, why you know better, you got this," So I just have to readjust, Her memory is forever gonna be alive because I will say my friend name forever. Shout out to my girl Tika, may she rest in peace. But I had to adjust and I had to like figure out what my new normal was going to be. But the one thing that I did not do is allow myself to give up. I think maybe with you, I might have had to reschedule with you because I was in that moment like, yeah, I'm no good right now. I'm not even finna get on and even act like that I'm finna put on a show. And I think that's what makes me authentic in myself is understanding those things and being transparent with that. So one, I want to thank you for being accommodating and,
Yeah,
working with me through that. But
absolutely.
speaking of working through things, kind of touch a little bit on your boundaries when it comes to the
Mm.
entrepreneurial journey, but also how you align your personal and your business, like growth and development and things like that. Talk a little bit about that.
Boundaries was something totally kind of new to me going into business for myself. I never really had to have those. I usually worked for people and, I just did my job and that was what I did. I didn't have to, there was the boundaries were already there and they were already set by everyone, right? And so developing that was a muscle I definitely had
That,
to do because I am a people pleaser and I really have recognized that working
yeah,
for myself that I have to say no to people and I have to let people go if they're just not fitting.
yeah. Everybody ain't aligned, y'all.
Nope.
Everybody is not aligned. Let me tell you.
Mhm.
As a former people pleaser. Because I tell people all the time, hey, that's like an addiction that you overcoming, like the addiction of people pleasing. That's probably a whole nother podcast topic, but it's facts because
Mhm.
especially as entrepreneurs, we want to please everybody. We will subject our rates, we will subject our time, our energy, and everything just so we can please that one person. But it's also leading to burnout. It's also leading to fatigue. It's also leading to you questioning if you are even capable because you got to go so hard for that, right? So I love that you have been introduced to that because I know it has helped you, continue to thrive along your journey. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah, for sure. And I also would say that on the burnout topic, so personally, how I deal with that is I take breaks because I cannot just keep going and keep going. I want to, but really my body's tired, I'm tired, or I'm snappy with my family, and that's when I know it's time to take a little break and, walk away from what you're doing and just minimize what I for myself, I just minimize what I do.
Right.
I don't totally stop, but I minimize wherever I can.
I would love for you to share some motivational insight to those who may be on that thought process of, hey, I want to start a podcast, or hey, I want to, even work with somebody else to start a podcast. Like, what would be your suggestions or even recommendations for that?
So, if you're thinking about launching a podcast and you're a little bit hesitant or thinking, I don't know, should I do solo? Should I do interview style? Should I do a co host? How should I do it? I would first try and do some podcast guesting first for your business and see, does this feel good to me? Am I enjoying it? Do I like the mic? Also, get a mic if you're going
That
to podcast guests, just because maybe you're going to start your own podcast anyways. So just get the mic,
facts.
right?
It's facts.
A great, like a nice condenser mic, and it should work really well for you. And try that first and then see if that feels aligned and right for you. And also, for those who want a podcast or are podcasting, ask yourself, what does my audience need to hear from me before they're ready to work with me? That question right there can be the core of your podcast. It can be, just the core, and you can spin so many ideas off of just that.
Definitely test the waters, guys. You definitely got to do that. I'm going to be honest, y'all. If y'all thinking about doing a podcast on the latest celebrity gossip, and because you see that that's trending with other people, is that really being authentically you? Or are you just trying to do something that you feel like is going to be? Because there's a difference between going viral. I'll say this:
Hmm.
you can go viral, but you have to stay relevant after that viral.
Yep.
Okay. So if that's not what you're out here wanting to do, if you just want a viral moment, then yeah, podcasting probably won't be for you. But if you are wanting to tell a story, if you're wanting to share with others about a story, if you want to bring people on to help them share their stories, then it's definitely something that I would recommend exploring. And definitely, Elena's information. I don't help people launch podcasts. She do. So her information will be in the show notes where you guys can reach out to her, schedule some time, learn more about what she can offer you. Because I do think that as women, especially, we definitely need to have our voices out here on various platforms doing various things. Shout out to you for acknowledging that and stepping up to do that.
Thank you so much. This has been
Absolutely.
such a fun time.
Absolutely. Well, all right, you guys, listen. I hope that you got great value out of this today. I hope there were some gems dropped that you can write down, and don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions wanting to learn more about what I do with upgraded mindsets or what Melina does, then definitely do not hesitate to reach out, you guys. We are here to provide insight, strategic value, but also to help you step into the most empowering version of yourself and whatever that looks like. So don't hesitate to reach out. Make sure you have favorited the podcast. Share this with your women entrepreneurial people, okay? Especially that one that talk a lot, so she might want to start her own podcast. Make sure you share this with her, all right? I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe. Talk to you later, baby.